Let's move now to Southeast Asia and the huge digital opportunity which presents itself as economies recover from the impact of the pandemic. Google has recently released the latest economy report on Southeast Asia, part of a 5-year research project with Temasek and Bain & Company. This year's title is At Full Velocity, Resilient and Racing Ahead. The report shows a surge in the adoption of digital in Southeast Asia during the pandemic, 40 million new internet users this year alone. That compares with 100 million in the period 2015 to 2019. According to the report, Southeast Asians navigating the coronavirus pandemic are using the internet in more ways and on a larger scale than ever before. The internet economy has provided access to essential goods, healthcare, and education during the crisis. Tech has become an indispensable part of everyday life. So where to now for the region? I'm joined now by Scott Beaumont, President, Asia Pacific at Google, and Nadiem Makarim, Minister of Education and Culture for Indonesia, who previously founded GO-JEK, Indonesia's first tech unicorn. Scott, I'll start with you. Let's firstly, congratulations on the report. It's a fascinating and timely piece of work. Now, you'd previously forecast Southeast Asia's internet economy would grow to about 300 billion by 2025. But economies have taken a big hit because of the pandemic. Is that figure still on the cards?
I think it is. I think actually it's probably a little bit more solid now than it was when we first made that forecast 12 months ago. It's been extraordinary to see the surge in usage that you just alluded to. This year, 2020, across the region, we're seeing 40 million new people come online for the first time. And in 2019, that figure was 10 million. So you can see the kind of impact that COVID has had. And we're seeing it in a broader base, not just a broader base of new users, but a broader base of usages. So you mentioned finance, education, healthcare. Education itself, 55% of users of education services this year have been new. 47% of people buying groceries have never done it before online. And of those new users, 90% of them state that they will continue to use those services even when we go back to whatever normal looks like once the vaccines start to play out. So that 300 billion number, which is 3 times where we are today, actually, I think that that's definitely achievable now.
Minister, let me turn to you now. How important is the internet economy to Indonesia's growth strategy?
It's incredibly important. I think that one large populated countries like Indonesia have a very kind of special opportunity to gain scale in terms of their technology companies. And scale is important in technology companies because they actually determine the size and the level of innovation and the amount of talent that can be absorbed in each of those respective technology companies. So, and as we are seeing a much more broad, exactly like Scott said, we're seeing a much more broader participation of the economy from the middle to even middle lower classes that are participating in the digital economy. What you're seeing is that population matters. It's not just GDP that matters, but population definitely matters in the type of scale. And you'll see that. You'll see the next generation of unicorns and decacorns all over large developing countries kind of growing up and becoming real players, not just in their region, but over time, they will tend towards global, at least regional, but in some cases, global growth. So I think that's why the internet economy is extremely important to Indonesia's growth story. One, because we have a demographic boom at the same time, which are almost all of them are digitally literate, right? That is coming into the economy, the millennials and Gen Z generation coming online. And then secondly, I think that is most important is the pandemic impact to what has happened. I'm in the education space, and we have never, ever seen before the number of teachers and parents that have been connected through digital platforms of their choice and kind of struggling and stumbling their way to discovering tools that they never would have had beforehand. So we're really entering a new paradigm. We don't know where this will go, but the key objective of Indonesia, as the president has basically instructed the cabinet is to kind of leap forward. And we really cannot afford to follow the history, the long trajectory of industrial nations. We kind of have to leap into a digital economy really quickly to get that level of productivity and growth that we need.
You mentioned education. I want to come back to you on that in a moment, because that's obviously a core part of the equation to leap ahead. But Scott, is the lack of skills an issue in a country like Indonesia? Is that one of the barriers to this phenomenal growth that we might expect?
Yes, interesting question. I don't think it's just Indonesia. Within the report that you mentioned, we identified 6 key enablers for a successful digital economy. So access to the internet is clearly important, of course. Access to funding, a good payments infrastructure, a good logistics infrastructure, user trust in the services, and then the availability of talent. And that basically, think about that in 2 ways. One, talent to be able to create the services for the market, but also the skills to be able to use those tools and make use of them on an ongoing basis. And I know this is something that Nadim's very on top of. And I think if Indonesia, you look at those key 6 elements, and there's a strong story either of those elements being in place or work being done to address them. But across the broader region, it's the talent area, which is where we're seeing the least progress, and where actually a mixture of public and private enterprise and partnership needs to be brought to bear to turn it around.
Yeah, Nadiem, you were brought in from GO-JEK to education portfolio in the government, which is not normal career path one might expect. So I assume that's very clear that education and training in this space is critically important to the president. What are you doing? How are you going about it?
Yeah, I want to kind of underscore also what Scott said. I think there are 2 things that will require huge, moving of mountains. The first is to get the internet infrastructure across all of the islands of Indonesia, right? That is not specifically under my ministry, but that will require a lot of collaboration from the use cases in the educational system. So first, we got to get the internet out to as many people, but that will happen anyway. That will happen. It's just that because of the pandemic, we're going to accelerate that process. But in terms of talent is the biggest bottleneck. And I can guarantee you that talent, it's not just Indonesia where talent is the bottleneck. Scott can tell you that across the world right now, we are dawning on this age whereby we realize that the entire economic value of all things in this new digital world is going to depend on talent. So everyone is scrambling, not only governments, companies, large technology companies, startups, they're all scrambling for talent. And so what Indonesia is doing right now is we have to do a few fast moves in how to acquire talent. So what we've done is we've kind of accelerated this trend in the educational system, which is called the unbundling of education. So what we've done is instead of trying to spend 10, 20 years trying to transform every single university to have digital practitioners and people who understand technology, which is going to happen anyway, and we are pushing very hard on that, we're trying to accelerate it through a few ways. One, we're actually enabling industry, technology, like technology companies, multilateral organizations, and all kinds of these institutions outside to create mini universities. We've actually created a policy that basically said university students can go up to 1 year off campus and get full credit for that. So we've opened up the field for world-class companies and organizations to create mini degrees or micro-credential programs, both in an internship model or in a much more structured micro-degree, micro-credential structure. So that's the first thing that we did, and to give full credit to the universities and to the students who participate in that. The other thing we did is we kind of transformed the entire incentive system for universities to encourage not only students leaving campus and getting experience out of campus, but for professors to leave campus and seek real world experience. And not only that, a huge other types of policies to invite practitioners to, we call it like the exodus from industry to campus, right? So there's it's a two-directional exodus that we would like to see between students and professors and practitioners teaching to the universities. So that's really, we're taking a very aggressive approach here, and we're providing funding behind all of these policies. But the problem, again, not only are we hitting the talent skill supply constraint, but at a population of our size, now we're hitting simply the number of companies that are willing and able to provide large-scale micro-credential programs, you know, and so that's how we have to get creative in thinking about the supply of education as well. We have to crack the supply of education as not so much the demand for education, because that's there, but the supply part is where governments really need to start thinking creatively, and also think about a little bit more how to operate like a technology kind of startup, in the sense that you have to move fast, you have to take significant risks to solve this talent issue that is quickly becoming, you know, a bit of a talent crisis, because that's going to be your total factor productivity cap. Talent is going to be the total factor productivity gap in both emerging and developed nations, and I firmly believe that.
Scott, do you see that there's a talent crisis looming, and what role does tech play in helping to address that?
Yeah, I see it at two levels. I mean, as Nadiem just outlined, you know, within schools and universities, you need to create the pipeline of computer scientists coming through, or those familiar with technology and what you can do with technology. For example, in Indonesia, we partner with the Ministry of Education and an organization called Bebras to help bring computer science through the school system. And then with qualified computer scientists, in collaboration with GO-JEK and Tokopedia and others, programs like Bankit to help computer scientists understand how to make use of AI and machine learning to, you know, to further accelerate development. So you've got support of the education system, but actually, importantly, particularly in Southeast Asia, you've got support of small and medium-sized businesses. And small and medium-sized businesses are 90% plus of total economic activity across the broader region. And putting the tools as simply as you can in the right hands and getting people comfortable with how they use that technology is a lifeline for many businesses, particularly during COVID, and it's going to be a key element in how quickly these economies bounce back. And you know, in Indonesia and other places around the region, that's one of our key focuses, to make sure that small business owners have the tools that they need to make sure that they can thrive going into 2021.
Minister, you co-founded GO-JEK, tech unicorn. Does Indonesia have the ecosystem and the support systems, especially among small and medium businesses, to have more and more unicorns? Is that where the creativity and the innovation is going to come from?
Not only. I think that the unicorns and the next generation of unicorns, it's a very dynamic list, right? There are always new guys coming up from the bottom, even in more mature digital economies like China. There's always the emerging unicorns rising one level below to challenge. So it's a very dynamic field. I do believe that a lot of the innovation on talent development will require collaboration with those technology companies, and not just the unicorns, but the international global technology giants such as Google, to come in and actually take that shape. Because ultimately, the future of small business and the future of the economy will depend upon those small businesses gaining enough real utility from digital services so that they are able to thrive and survive. They need to get online. They need to know how to get online, right? They don't need a tech team of their own, but they need to understand how to use those softwares and platforms that are already being used to either find a market, to buy something, to sell something, or to actually know how to market their business in this new digital age. So it's a little bit different. Whereas whereas governments and the country needs to actually build technology talent, for the small and medium businesses, there needs to be massive socialization and training to use the existing platforms. So it's a slightly different approach, but I think both are equally important. But the great news is that because of the size of that small and medium business market, you know that every single large unicorn and all of these large technology companies are going to be gunning for that piece of the pie. And so that's a great thing, knowing that they are a really interesting and monetizable part of the digital economy. So you've got fintech experts now coming in trying to capture that market. You've got food delivery players there, e-commerce players coming in. You've got all kinds of SaaS producers trying to make their business more efficient. So it's a wonderful thing seeing all these technology companies competing for these small and medium businesses that you would not necessarily see, 20 years ago, right? Large companies tend to go for another large companies, but in the digital age, small is valuable.
Scott, is that the role for the Googles of this world, the tech giants? They clearly have a role to play in the development of Southeast Asia's digital economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that Google's always been passionate about is trying to democratize the use of the tools as much as possible, whether that's things like TensorFlow, which puts AI capability in anyone's hands, or Android, which allows you basically to write code to reach over 2 billion users worldwide. It's always been part of our philosophy to allow that to happen. And the reasons for that are, that's great as a broader purpose. It's definitely generates a lot of goodwill and a lot of benefit. But equally, everyone who's familiar with using digital services is a potential future customer, a potential future marketer, a potential future developer, a potential user of our services. And so, from the investment in deep sea underwater cables to the investments in Google Cloud to the investments in the next Android library, these are all things which, from a Google perspective, the more people using the internet, the better and more fruitful that's going to be for everyone in the long term, including us.
Final question to you, Minister. There's talk of GO-JEK and Grab merging. The unicorns are growing up and moving to the next phase of development. Is that the evolution of what were startups 10 years ago to now merge, consolidate as the next series of startups start getting traction?
Not necessarily. I think that in certain scenarios, mergers and consolidation may make sense. We've definitely seen that around the world that is happening, but that is not always the case. So I think a lot of people just assume that, like technology is very much a zero-sum game. They look at companies that are really, really large and are natural kind of monopolies, or I'm not supposed to say that, but it happens. But what happens is that actually the trend is not like that. There's only very specific fields that lends itself to natural kind of consolidated company. You will always have multi-players in many, many segments, especially in the transactional based businesses. So the closer you are to transactional based businesses, the more there will always be multi-players in those segments. And as soon as you don't charge anything to your customers or your end users, if you don't charge anything, that lends itself to a little bit more of a consolidation over time, or kind of having a single product that everyone uses, because the network effect is really, really big. So I don't think there's a rule to this. I think it depends on the time, it depends on the segment, and
I think we've lost the minister briefly, but we were just about
depends on the relationship with the end user and who's actually.
We lost you just for a moment there.
Sorry.
Nadiem. We lost you just for a moment, but I think we can. But I think we captured the thrust of what you said, that consolidation isn't necessarily on the cards because of the unique nature of the technology and I guess the ecosystem. With that, I'm afraid we have to leave it. Nadiem Makarim, Minister, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. All the very best.
Thank you.
And Scott Beaumont, thanks very much. Congratulations on a terrific report, and we look forward to reading the next iteration of it next year.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, both.